Hello there! Welcome to Weird Music on the Glumburger channel. This is of course that really weird show with that really weird presenter talking about, sometimes weird albums. I just like to look at all sorts of different things. So, for today's episode, we're going to be indulging in colossal riffs as we satisfy, those stoner doomers with an incredible debut album, to be fair. Now, this album, I think it's just brilliant. It hits all the right notes for people who enjoy their doom music with an awfully cleaner sounding vocal, if that makes sense. I'm quite excited to talk about this one. This is Colosseum by Buried Sleeper. So of course, let's ask ourselves, who are Buried Sleeper? Well, Buried Sleeper are a stoner doom band from Glasgow, Scotland, comprised of members Tommy Wickman on bass, Dominic Hardy on drums, Harry Clapman on guitars, and Bryce Sutherland on vocals and guitars. And having all originally performed under the moniker of Triangle Theory, Buried Sleeper sees all the musicians just indulging in the colossal riff, offering us that wonderful doomy album experience that it's so reminiscent of the kind of doom styles you'd often see in like the likes of America, which is kind of interesting. I feel it's so weird that they're from Scotland. Yeah, today diving into Colosseum here, the debut album that offers us monolithic dirgy dooms ranging from about 2.5 minutes to tracks that are just shy of 15 minutes, and covering a wide range of themes, from the occult and mythical logical monsters and the vastness of space itself. Let's just dive into it, shall we? So, Colosseum opens up with the ferociously indulgent Dom cry, immediately just bringing us that fuzz in the left channel before squealing heaviness just drops into all of the speakers. This one, it just starts everything off slow and doomy as you just start the slow headbanging. And there's something just so satisfying though about this album. It just pushes everything off in such an amazingly fun fashion, with everything just getting turned up as the fuzzy, distorted riffs that dominate the whole proceedings, pushed along by this brilliant drumming, to be fair. But what I like about this though, when it comes to some albums, sometimes the instrumentals or the vocals are like arguably the main dominating force, right? But I feel like with Buried Sleeper here, both have been mixed together really brilliantly, to be fair. You're getting these really doomy instrumentals and these very clean vocals that are, just sitting amongst the tracks basically, and it makes it all sound so cohesive and present the same overall vision without there just being one dominating force over the whole album, if that makes sense. But as well, let's go on about these vocals, shall we? This Scottish band perform with this really peculiar vocal style that I think is just so reminiscent of like that desert rock style you'd see in America. And I'm going to be honest now, when I first heard Buried Sleeper, I thought it was an American band. But it just goes to show you, I guess, like sometimes I'm clearly an idiot, right? But I think it's brilliant though, like there's just this wonderful edge to the vocal delivery that makes it so satisfying, especially when you just get these notes that are just elongated and held onto for ages. It's so brilliant amongst that really heavy, chewy metal instrumentals. But let's move on though. Colosseum moves on to what I think is one of the best tracks on this whole album, the 14.5 minute long Pale Blue Dot. And I assume this is named after the famous photograph of the Earth taken by Voyager 1 from a record distance of 6 billion kilometers. And just to go briefly into it, this is, like, just talk about the photo, I think this is genuinely one of my favorite photographs, I have this weird fascination with, the photography of space that, NASA have pushed out, and this one just fills me with this bewildering existentialism, a brilliant reminder of the sheer scale of the universe and the tiny minuteness of the Earth in comparison to just literally everything else out there. But let's get back to the track in question, of course. This one, it kind of proceeds along with almost prog rock vibes that still push out that heavy, indulgent, doomy style, and sits comfortably within it as well. But it's brilliant though. You're just getting this really slow atmospheric opening to this one. It's just before the heavy doomy riffs start just pummeling you. And then you just get this wonderful hazy dirge for the whole thing. But what I love though, in this one in particular though, like, it's so satisfying to listen to, but it's around 9 minutes in though, after this whole massive build-up of just colossal proportions, everything just starts to fade back and subside a bit, and then you just get this brilliant, like, spaced rock riff that just feels like floating around in space, basically, and, you know, very reminiscent of the very image itself that we just talked about, the pale blue dot, of course. And I don't know if that was intentional, but it just comes across to me as so, if that makes sense. And like, especially every time I listen to this track now, I just imagine myself just being on the Voyager, gazing upon that dot, watching it just get smaller and smaller as we just, you know, explore the vast, furthest reaches of space itself. Moving right along though, track 3, Planetary Indecision. So, this is the shortest track on this album, but it's a brilliant dirge, of course, you know, incredibly fuzzy riffs that just fill up your headphones, and it's got that lovely headbanging quality to it, of course, as it just progresses along. And as well though, like, we've mentioned it a bunch, but wonderful vocal performances as well, like, you know, I just think I love how all the vocals sound on these songs, you know, especially amongst those incredibly fuzzy instrumentals. But the ending of this one is particularly great though. It just devolves into this incredibly dirgy yet very chaotic outro before it all just ends. You know, I'll be honest, there's not a great deal to comment on this one, but don't let that detract from the satisfying qualities of this one. You know, sometimes short and sweet is exactly what we need, you know, especially in doom music, you know, arguably. I'll be honest, I do prefer the really long ones and stuff, but sometimes a nice short one is great, don't get me wrong. And so we get to the middle track, slap bang in the centre of this entire album, and just shy of 5 minutes, the brilliant track Manticore. And this one has a brilliant bass riff that just chugs and chugs along, buzzed out and distorted in such a phenomenal way that makes it so much fun to listen to. And I think, you know, it's a particular highlight on the album once again. And I think all the songs are great, actually. I might end up saying it a lot. But this one just has such incredibly satisfying, doomy low-end notes, as well as, you know, brilliant vocals again, especially on the chorus that are just stretching upwards and upwards. And as well, which I find quite interesting, there's a really nicely placed guitar solo midway through this track before it, you know, returns back to that, you know, wonderful vocal again. And this just has all those brilliant headbanging qualities you want in a stonery doom track. It's heavy, indulgent, and incredibly satisfying, and I would argue that it's a bit reminiscent of the likes of Sleep at times, especially like the shorter songs you get from Sleep, like something off Sleep's Holy Mountain, if that makes sense. But to go back to the track in question though, just quickly, the ending of this one, you just get a slight slowdown whilst the heavy notes just ring out and out with this deluge of noisy feedback. It's, man, so satisfying. It's so good. And so with track 5, we're on to what is probably the second, I would argue that with track 5 you're moving on to what is the second half of the whole album, if that makes sense. Maybe. I mean, this was only released on CD, to be fair, so, you know, it doesn't have the vinyl flipping over thing. But anyway, you get another long atmospheric track with this one, the 10.5 minute Finite Lord. And this opens up with a very peculiar soundscape of guitars just ringing out with delay effects and atmospheric drones just occupying the background, before it all just lands on this brilliantly noisy note of distortion, fuzz and feedback, of course. It's a phenomenal way to open up this track, I feel. And it just makes it all so satisfying to hear. And then of course, what else do we have but the quintessential dirgy doom proceedings, of course, offset by the squealing and the whining of the electric guitar soloing over the whole top of it all, in a way that just still sits so nicely within the song. And I keep mentioning it, but once again, brilliant vocals. Like, I love the vocals on this album. It's one of my favourite things about it, as well as all that fuzzy instrumentals, of course, you know. It just sits so nicely amongst the riffs and stuff that just push the whole track along, if that makes sense. This one has a weirdly pummeling like quality to it, as it just, you know, you get that brilliantly indulging riff that's just dominating like so much of this. It's all mixed so well together though, like it's all just so brilliant. And this one as well, it's another one with a lovely guitar solo that it's once again very reminiscent of something the likes of Matt Pike of Sleep might do. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the particular tone you're getting on the electric guitar, maybe it's the stonery doom genre thing, right? But I just think there's something brilliant about it. It's just so much. It's fun, it's heavy, it's distorted, and it's just got all that exact right level of fuzz and noise. All just brilliant stuff, you know. And so, we get to the penultimate track here, and the title track of the whole album, the roughly 6-minute long Colosseum. And this is an interesting one. This one is, you know, all atmosphere, I feel, as you're given this, you know, lovely cleanish guitar tone that just picks around on this really lovely riff, you know, backed up by that second guitar that's supporting it all as it progresses. And there's something just so cosmic and spacey about this one. You know, after the heavy indulgent riffage of the previous tracks, you know, this acts as a lovely moment of respite across the whole album experience, you know. And as well, showcases some brilliant talents from all the band members in terms of a slower, more relaxed pace on this track. And yep, vocals on this one too, but I feel like the presentation of the vocals on this one are a little bit different to the rest of the album, as, you know, when the vocals do come in, all the instrumentals have dropped away and apart from this very sparse little guitar line that accompanies it. And then, of course, all the rest of the instruments do come in, but they're still supporting, you know, that very quiet, low-key sound that has now become a very interesting point on this particular track. And there's something so atmospheric and almost spooky about this particular track, you know. It's you know, one that I feel like is diving into themes of, you know, the occult and the Illuminati and just mysticism, if that makes sense, you know. One that really sums up the album cover, I would argue. But I like how, you know, for the final stretch in the final minute, it just goes back to that opening riff that we started with, acting almost as a peculiar existential experience within a moment of calm, if that makes sense. However, there is one final track to bring this whole thing to a close, the 10-minute long Temple of Nothing. And this one opens up rather interestingly. You're getting this drum counting, you know, but it doesn't immediately pummel you with this heavy riff, but instead it just has a distorted flickering of various notes that are still heavy with distortion and fuzz. And it gives us a moment to anticipate the drop into the fuzzy riff that will close off this whole album, essentially. And when it does fall into it though, there's something very satisfying about that indeed. And I love how this one just feels like, you know, it's almost, the track is almost like stumbling around trying to find itself, as though we're exploring the dark recesses of the temple itself, you know, before suddenly we find ourselves confronted by the very peculiar setting, you know, lost as we try to navigate its labyrinthian halls. And this one, you know, as much as the whole album, in fairness, it has that very fuzzy desert stoner doom style to it when the vocals introduce themselves, and it just all pushes along so nicely, and it's a brilliant way to end this album as it just batters its way to the ending on one final chug of pure riffage. And so with that, you know, we've covered the entirety of Colosseum by Buried Sleeper, you know. Yeah, and eventually we're coming to the end of this episode as well, actually. I have to say, you know, this is the kind of stuff I really enjoy when it comes to heavy music, though, you know. I love how Buried Sleeper just have these very clean sounding vocals, that sits so comfortably within their very doomy riffs. And it creates this brilliant listening album experience for us where it just makes you want to put your hair down and start headbanging along, of course. It's great for fans of the the stonery doom genre, those who like the likes of Sleep and Chaos, of course, where it just feels like standing out in the middle of the hot, sweltering desert as you're confronted with the strange cosmic world that is beyond out there. Before I close off though, I would actually like to extend my thanks to Buried Sleeper themselves actually, as when I ordered both this CD and also, stand up for it, the t-shirt combo here as well, which only cost about a tenner by the way I have to say, which was brilliant I thought. No, they, when I ordered it on the Bandcamp, they sent me a message apologising for its late delivery, and as a result they bundled in their second album as well, Obsidian here. I don't know why they decided to do that, because it wasn't even all that late at all, it's completely unnecessary, but genuinely very kind of them indeed, and I was still going to make this video, but I just wanted to mention that, as a point, because I just thought it was really nice of them, and that's such a cool thing to do, because now I've got both Buried Sleeper albums here. But yeah, that covers our video on this weird, Scottish band that aren't from America. Weird stonery doom desert dirge stuff. It's just a brilliantly satisfying album, and I just wanted to talk about it. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching today's episode of Weird Music then. I wish you all the best, take care, and bye bye for now. Bye bye!